It's another edition of Dolphins Today, and we're talking about blockbuster deals to have your eye on as we enter the month of October, the trade deadline at the end of the month. Our Dolphins are in prime position, tied at the top of the AFC East, obviously behind Buffalo after they lost with that tiebreaker, but 3-1 start, eyeing their first 4-1 start in over 20 years. And he got a lot of good things going. But we also have some holes to maybe fill by way of the trade, something this Dolphins team has proven to do in the past. So we're not saying this is going to happen per se, but look at the team's history when it comes to blockbuster trades. The team's recent history, I should say. Wasn't that long ago when the Dolphins made a splash and brought in Jalen Ramsey. We obviously know that they brought in Bradley Chubb by way of trade. And oh yeah, the Cheetah, that's right. He was traded to the Miami Dolphins in another blockbuster deal. So Chris Grier, the general manager for this Miami Dolphins organization, has proven he's not afraid. He's not afraid to make a trade. Everybody. No, so here's an example of the Jalen Ramsey trade, which the Dolphins pulled off not too long ago. They sent a 2023 third-round pick and Hunter Long in exchange for Jalen Ramsey. Wasn't that long ago, the Dolphins also brought in Bradley Chubb by way of the trade, sending that 2023 first-round pick via San Francisco over to the Broncos, as well as the 2024 fourth-round pick, and of course the running back Chase Edmonds. Not to be outdone by that trade with Tyreek Hill, bringing him in the Cheetah, the fastest player in the National Football League, and all they had to do was send over to Kansas City that first-round pick, number 29 overall, and a 2022 second and fourth-round pick, and a fourth and sixth-round pick of 2023. So, point being, we're not saying anything specific is going to happen, but you got to have your eyes open. You got to have your antennas out, if you will, and be aware of some of the big names that might be willing to be on the move, and the organizations that are willing to pick up the phone and listen to some trade talks. Starting, and none bigger, in my opinion, than the potential of trading for Patrick Surtain. We know what the Dolphins did to the Denver Broncos a few short weeks ago. They hung a 70-burger on them, and Patrick Surtain was on that defense. Listen, I think he's done with Denver. I don't think he wants to continue playing. Denver's team is in shambles. You got Sean Payton as the head coach. You got him yelling at the media. Yes, they just got a win against the lowly Bears, but they had to come back from 21 down to do so. And I think the Broncos, Bears, and Panthers are the three teams that have punted on the season and are simply thinking about Caleb Williams. They're 1-3 with only the win over the Bears, as I mentioned. And the Broncos are on record saying, we'll play ball. We'll listen to some potential trade talks. So Patrick Surtain could be a guy that's on the move. And what better spot than the Miami Dolphins, who secondary has been a little bit of a weak spot. And not to mention, not only is Pat Surtain II not happy in Denver, his father, former Dolphins member himself, played for the Miami Dolphins. He was getting active on Twitter. Yes, this was from a little more than a week ago when the when the Broncos were getting embarrassed by the Dolphins. But he tweeted this about his son toiling in the soil. SMH. You deserve better, meaning he deserves better than the Denver Broncos. Just like Steve Carell is better than the Gap, Pat Surtain is better than the Broncos. Let's get him to Miami. The Broncos are not the space for him. And look at this depth chart in which we could pair him with. Xavier Howard's been really good. Kader Kohou has at times, and I'll even say he's played 3 really good games. One really bad game. He got exposed by Stephon Diggs. That was a tough pill to swallow. But you add a guy like Pat Surtain into the mix, and Vic Fangio would have a field day. Not to mention, we still have the unproven rookie, Cam Smith, yet to make his debut for the Dolphins out of South Carolina. Second-round pick. I want to see him in the lineup, but you get the idea. Adding Pat Surtain to this Dolphins secondary would be a welcomed addition. And yes, you would have to give up a lot. There's no getting around with that. Maybe a first rounder, maybe a second rounder. Not exactly sure. I think it'd be similar to the Jalen Ramsey deal. I think both those guys are pretty comparable in terms of lockdown corners in the National Football League. But I want to know from you. It is our pinned comment. Should Miami make a splash and trade for Pat Surtain? Type Y for yes or N for no. We also got to get into this because I think there's a little bit of noise. I'm not going to say it's pretentious noise or anything like that, or turmoil. I'm not going to use that phrase about the Dolphins secondary, but we made note of this earlier in the week. Xavier Howard wants to guard the team's best player. Kader Kohou, no disrespect, but the task of guarding Stephon Diggs was clearly too much. And when asked about not guarding Stephon Diggs, Xavier Howard said this: "It's a mentality for me. I want to go at the best. Let me make my money on the top guy. You pay me this money to go do what I do. But it's a new defense, a new scheme. I just have to control the stuff I can control." So obviously there's some frustration today frustration from Xavier Howard. And when you mix in the fact that Cam Smith also has not played for this Dolphins team, this tweet from Joe Shad, one of the beat reporters for the Miami Dolphins, said basically he's begging. He's begging for Vic Fangio to give Cam Smith an opportunity. And Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio are in collaboration together of what the strategy of the defense should consist of. Should that be Cam Smith getting an opportunity? Should it be Xavier Howard on the opposition's number one wide receiver? I think Vic Fangio in his first year as defensive coordinator is still feeling that stuff out and still getting a hold of exactly what that might consist of. You know what I'm not feeling out? GameTime. Because I know it's the best ticketing app. I don't have to wonder or question or try to piece things together. I know it is far and away the best ticketing app out there. And most importantly, they're a proud sponsor of Dolphins Today, which I love. We appreciate. Happy to be on board with GameTime because you're going to get the best deal, lowest price guaranteed on the best seats in the house, and last-minute deals, which I love because I'm a last-minute kind of guy. You ask anybody in the office, Riepma, what are you, a last-minute kind of guy? Absolutely. And the good thing is, you know exactly where you're going to be sitting because the app is super easy to use. There's no diagrams or grainy pictures. You get a clear, high-definition picture of exactly where you're going to sit. No deception. And good news, I come bringing good news. That's what I do. We're giving you $20 off with promo code FINSCHAT when you create an account and use that promo code, PHINSCHAT. That's promo code FINSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. Look, I love GameTime because you can snag the tickets without the stress. There's no stress. It's awesome. And so don't wait. Download the GameTime app today. Create that account. Use code FINSCHAT with a PH, PHINSCHAT for $20 off. Terms do apply, but create that account. Redeem that code for $20 off. And a big thanks to GameTime for helping make today's show possible. Download the GameTime app today for last-minute tickets and the lowest price guaranteed. Now, earlier it was confirmed that River Craycraft is going to miss some significant time. He's been placed on injured reserve, and so because of that, the wide receiver room might need some help. It's a little bit top-heavy, might be the best way to describe it, because I think you've got the top wide receiver duo in the National Football League in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. When both healthy, it's tough to beat that 1-2 punch. However, when you lose River Craycraft and Eric Ezukama, now, it was confirmed that Ezukama is not going to need neck surgery, so there is potential that we could get him back, albeit he hasn't really had much of an impact on the season thus far. The same is not true for River Craycraft. He has a touchdown reception on the season on 6 catches with 87 yards, whereas Eric Ezukanma has just registered the 1 catch. Although Mike McDaniel has used Ezukanma in the running game a little bit, but you get the idea. It's a huge loss losing both of those guys together because River Craycraft can be kind of like that glue guy to help aid that offense in that wide receiver room. But let's get a little bit crazy for a second. How about the notion of perhaps trading for a guy like Davante Adams out of Las Vegas? We know he's unhappy with the Raiders. The Raiders season, not off to a great start, to say the least. Anytime you got fans screaming at the owner to fire the head coach, that's not great. But Adams was traded to the Raiders in March of 2022. Nobody saw that one coming, so perhaps another trade for Adams nobody's going to see as well. He's had a monster career, and he's kept it going with the Raiders. In 21 games, he's registered nearly 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns, but he's unhappy and could perhaps be on the move. Now, that would be a blockbuster deal. That'd be something you mortgage the future for. That'd be a move where you're moving all your poker chips in on the table and saying, we are all in, which I wouldn't hate, but that would be quite a splash. That would be the type of move that really puts the rest of the league on notice, and I'm not sure the Dolphins are at that point in needing to do that. Plus, how much ball is there for Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams, and Jalen Waddle? But this is a quote that really stood out to me that I believe paints a picture of exactly how Davante Adams feels and why he might be on the move, saying earlier, it's not my mentality to sit here and try to take all season and figure it out. You use these early games like this to establish an identity. We're not doing things the right way to establish a winning culture. So I think some team might pony up and trade for Davante Adams. Do I think it's going to be the Dolphins? Not yet. More likely, or perhaps a better fit, a glue guy, a guy that could also add to the wide receiver room that might also be on the trade block out of the exact same place, the Las Vegas Raiders, and that is Hunter Renfro. He recently signed a 2-year, $33 million contract extension in the summer of 2022, so last summer, and he followed that up with his worst year as a pro, just 36 catches for only 330 yards and only 2 touchdowns. This is a guy that's won his whole life. He won at Clemson. He won when he entered the league. He's been a guy that you can count on. Only has 5 receptions this season in 4 games. And he's only playing less than 45% of the snaps. So obviously, for some reason or another, he's fallen out of favor with that coaching staff of the Raiders because he's a proven guy that should be playing more than 45% of the snaps. And again, I don't think it's an exact comparison, but he's not a number 1 option, just like River Craycraft wasn't the number 1 option, but he could be a guy that completes the wide receiver room. You've got the dynamic electricity, game-changing potential of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and then you throw in a steady go-to guy for Tua to utilize in Hunter Renfro. I love the idea of trading for Hunter Renfro, and I don't think it would cost you too much either. So I need you, maybe even a 7th-round pick. I need you to weigh in on this one for me because we've got a couple of different options for you, and let me know in the chat, of the 2 players we mentioned, who do you want the Dolphins to trade for? Type DA for Davante Adams, obviously a higher asking price, or HR for Hunter Renfro, maybe a better fit, or if you're like, oh, Riepma, we're good. We don't need anybody. Go ahead and type N for neither. I think the Dolphins are good. If you can work something out with Hunter Renfro, that would be the one I'd be more on board with because the asking price for Adams is just going to be too much. I love Tyreek Hill. I love Jalen Waddle. If you want to throw in Hunter Renfro and it makes sense, make the call, get in collaboration with the Raiders, and let's figure something out. However, I'm not quite there. In fact, I'm a little bit more concerned about this offensive line room as opposed to the wide receiver room. This Dolphins offensive line is beat up. Terron Armstead, already been ruled out for Sunday's game against the New York Football Giants. Now, Kendall Lamb has played great in his absence. Isaiah Wynn has been good. Underneath Isaiah Wynn, you see Liam Eichenberg. He filled in for Connor Williams at the center position and was abysmal. No disrespect, he's just a really bad football player. And so I think the Dolphins' offensive line could benefit from making a trade to boost up that offensive line and add depth in addition to helping ease some of those injury pains that the Dolphins' offensive line. So it wasn't that long ago where after the game at Hard Rock Stadium, this individual sounded off in the comments with the media afterwards. Garrett Boles, an offensive lineman for the Broncos. Yes, he's a tackle, but throughout his career, he's played just about every position in the offensive line. And Ian Rappaport believes, NFL Insider believes, Denver is willing to listen to trade offers for Garrett Boles. Now, I'm going to paint a little picture here. Maybe you remember his outcry for essentially sounding off against the Broncos after their loss against the Dolphins. It basically went viral. I mean, he talked about since he's been here, all we've done is lose. Here's the exact quote. I've been here 7 years, and all I've done is lost. Broncos lineman Garrett Boles shared his emotions after Denver's 50-point loss to Miami. Excuse me. We're good. That's how he feels about losing. He hates it. I felt the losing coming through there. Point being, Boles wants to be on the move. The Broncos season is over. They're in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. They're tanking. Why not make a deal? Again, it's one I don't think will cost you a lot, maybe a late round pick, but something that the Dolphins could certainly benefit from by pulling the trigger. So keep your eye on a trade potential for Garrett Boles from the Denver Broncos. Let me ask you this. What do you think is the position group Miami needs to improve upon the most? Let me know in the comments. Type S for secondary, WR for wide receiver, or OL for offensive line. You let me know. I'm very curious what you think. I think it's the offensive line because the wide receiver room, yes, it's been plagued by injuries a little bit, but I think those guys are going to come back. And when you have such talent at the wide receiver room, it doesn't necessarily make sense to pull the trigger. Whereas the offensive line has been decimated by injuries, not to mention the offensive line might be the most important ingredient to the Dolphins' success because if Tua doesn't have time to pass, we know what happens. I'm not going to get into all that. But point being, if you can shore up this offensive line, this offense will continue to be scary good. And perhaps the greatest offense since that 1999 Rams team, the greatest show on turf. So I think the Dolphins need to shore up the offensive line. The secondary is going to get healthy. They're going to get some help back. Not to mention you got Cam Smith there that you just haven't really given a chance. And if you took a second-round pick on him, you obviously believe in him. So that said, I'd love to see the Dolphins shore up the offensive line. And I'd also love to see you subscribe because we got a ton going on Dolphins Today. We have a ton of fun. Our next watch party is for Sunday's game against the New York Football Giants. Come join me, join Jack. We'll have a great time watching the Dolphins dominate. We'll get it going early. We're going to have an extended pregame show. So we're going to get loud, early and often in preparation of a ass kicking to the Giants. Can't wait for that. So make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss it. We've also got daily videos, live shows, all kinds of Dolphins content. It is your one-stop shop for Dolphins content.